The story of the Sixth Crusade begins long before swords were drawn or banners raised, in the court of a man who was unlike any other ruler of his age. Frederick II of Hohenstaufen, King of Sicily, and later Holy Roman Emperor, had been bound by oath to take the cross since his youth. Yet unlike the fiery knights of the First Crusade or the proud kings of the Third, Frederick was a scholar as much as a sovereign, a man more at ease with philosophers and poets than with zealots and warriors. He spoke multiple languages, studied the stars, conversed with Muslim scholars, and was fascinated by the knowledge of the East. To some, this made him a Renaissance prince before his time. To others, especially in the papal court, it made him dangerous, untrustworthy, and perhaps even heretical. And yet, for all his complexity, he stood at the center of a promise to restore Christian presence in the Holy Land after the calamities of the past century. Since the loss of Jerusalem in 1187 to Saladin and the failure of subsequent crusades to secure lasting peace, Christendom's dream of reclaiming the Holy City had become an obsession. The Fourth Crusade had ended in disgrace, with crusaders sacking Christian Constantinople instead of confronting the Muslims. The Fifth Crusade, a grand effort targeting Egypt, collapsed in disaster after years of hardship, leaving many to believe that the age of successful crusades was over. And yet, in the midst of this disillusionment, one man was expected to try again. For years the popes had pressed Frederick to fulfill his vow, and for years he delayed, citing illness, political obligations, and the instability of his vast empire. Each delay deepened suspicion, each excuse angered the papacy, but fate and history would conspire to push Frederick at last toward the east, though not in the manner the Church desired. In the year 1227, preparations for a new crusade finally gained momentum. Thousands of knights and pilgrims gathered in Italy, ready to embark for the Holy Land. Frederick, as their leader, was expected to sail with them. But at the last moment, sickness struck him down and he delayed yet again. To Pope Gregory IX, this was the final insult. Declaring that Frederick's excuses masked contempt for Christendom, the Pope excommunicated the Emperor. The leader of the crusade was cast outside the Church, his soul cut off from the sacraments, his reputation stained before all of Europe. It was an unprecedented scandal, a crusade whose commander was, in the eyes of the Church, a rebel against God. Yet Frederick did not yield. He declared that his vow remained, and that with or without papal blessing he would journey to the Holy Land. His determination transformed what might have been a routine campaign into something entirely new, a holy war waged by an emperor excommunicate, a crusade that would unfold as no other had before. When Frederick finally set sail in 1228, he did so not with the full weight of Christendom behind him, but with a fractured host of loyalists, mercenaries, and opportunists. He carried with him not just the burden of excommunication, but also the mistrust of the military orders in the East, the suspicion of local barons, and the hostility of the papacy. Yet where others saw weakness, Frederick saw an opportunity. He knew that war had brought little but ruin in recent crusades. Egypt had proven too strong, Syria too divided, and Jerusalem itself too exposed to be held by force. But Frederick possessed a different kind of weapon: diplomacy, patience, and a mind sharpened by years of study. His plan was not to fight, but to negotiate, to win by words what armies had failed to seize with steel. In the Holy Land, the situation was as complex as ever. The Muslim world, though strong, was fractured by rival dynasties. The Ayyubid Empire, founded by Saladin, was divided among his heirs. Sultan al-Kamil, ruler of Egypt and nephew of the great Saladin, faced challenges from his brothers, who controlled Damascus and Aleppo. His hold on power was not secure, and he feared being encircled by enemies both Muslim and Christian. For him, peace with Frederick offered a way to consolidate his rule. He had little love for bloodshed if it could be avoided, and his pragmatism matched Frederick's. Thus began one of the strangest episodes in the history of the Crusades. Two rulers, one Christian and excommunicate, the other Muslim and pragmatic, began a dialogue that would change the fate of Jerusalem. Their negotiations unfolded with a subtlety and elegance alien to the battlefield. Letters were exchanged, envoys dispatched, and ideas debated in the courts of Acre and Cairo. Frederick impressed the Sultan by his knowledge of Arabic, his curiosity about Islam, and his willingness to treat Muslims as equals rather than enemies. Al-Kamil, in turn, admired Frederick's intellect and saw in him a man who understood the futility of endless war. Gradually, the outlines of an agreement took shape. Jerusalem, the prize for which generations had fought and died, would be returned to the Christians, not through siege or conquest, but through treaty. The Temple Mount, sacred to both faiths, would remain in Muslim hands, ensuring that Islamic worship continued. The city would be open to pilgrims of both religions. It was a compromise unprecedented in the history of the Crusades, a peace forged not by the sword, but by reason. In February 1229, the treaty was sealed. Frederick, still under the ban of the Pope, entered Jerusalem not as a conqueror drenched in blood, but as a pilgrim crowned with controversy. There was no triumphant battle to recount, no clash of armies to immortalize in song. Instead, the emperor walked through the gates of the Holy City in eerie silence. The clergy of the Latin Church, suspicious of his excommunication, refused to crown him king in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Undeterred, Frederick placed the crown upon his own head, a gesture both defiant and symbolic. He had achieved what no crusader had managed in decades, the restoration of Jerusalem to Christian control. Yet he had done so without papal sanction, without the thunder of swords, and without the blood of martyrs. To some, it was a triumph of wisdom. To others, a betrayal of faith. The reaction to Frederick's achievement was as divided as the world that birthed it. In the East, some crusaders rejoiced, grateful to walk again in Jerusalem's streets without fear of Saracen guards. Pilgrims flocked to the city, marveling that it had been returned without war. Yet others grumbled that the treaty was fragile, temporary, and incomplete. The Muslims retained control of the Temple Mount, and fortifications were weak. Without strong military support, Jerusalem could easily fall again. In the West, Pope Gregory IX denounced the entire affair. To him, Frederick's actions were an affront to papal authority, a usurpation of the Church's role in guiding Christendom. Instead of celebrating the peaceful recovery of the Holy City, the Pope condemned the emperor as a fraud. The irony was stark. The man who had returned Jerusalem was vilified, while those who had lost it in previous crusades had been celebrated as heroes. Frederick himself seemed indifferent to the storms of opinion swirling around him. He lingered only briefly in the East, overseeing the arrangement of affairs in Jerusalem and Acre before returning to his empire. His departure left many feeling abandoned, for without his presence the fragile balance he had crafted soon wavered. Yet Frederick's purpose had never been to establish a lasting military kingdom in the Levant. His goal was to fulfill his vow, to restore Jerusalem, and to do so in a way that served his wider ambitions in Europe. In this, he succeeded. The Sixth Crusade ended not with dramatic battles, but with a treaty, a coronation, and a storm of controversy that would echo for generations. The legacy of the Sixth Crusade is a paradox. On one hand, it achieved what countless armies had failed to do, the peaceful return of Jerusalem. On the other, its success was fragile and fleeting. Only a decade later, Muslim forces would retake the city, proving that diplomacy without strong defenses could not withstand the tides of war. Yet, in its very uniqueness, the Crusade stands apart. It revealed that the clash between cross and crescent was not destined to be fought solely with steel. It showed that words could win what weapons could not, that reason could succeed where violence had failed. For Frederick, it cemented his reputation as a ruler unlike any other, a man condemned by the Pope yet capable of bending history to his will. For the papacy, it was a humiliation, a reminder that its authority could be challenged even in the holiest of causes. And so the Sixth Crusade lingers in memory as both triumph and tragedy, wisdom and folly. It was a crusade without bloodshed, a war fought with pens and promises rather than swords and shields. In its quiet way, it accomplished what the thunder of armies had not, yet it also revealed the fragility of peace in a world addicted to war. The Holy City returned to Christian hands, but not for long. The emperor claimed his crown, but in defiance of the Pope, and history, ever restless, marched on. leaving behind the strange tale of a crusade unlike any other, where the battlefield was the mind, and the victory won without a single drop of blood spilled upon the sands of Jerusalem. And so the Sixth Crusade came to an end, not with the roar of battle, but with the quiet signing of a treaty, and the strange spectacle of an emperor crowning himself in a city he had won without a fight. It was a story that baffled contemporaries and continues to puzzle historians. A crusade that broke every expectation, a holy war carried out by an excommunicated sovereign, a victory won not through conquest, but through compromise. For a brief moment, Jerusalem returned to Christian hands, its gates open to pilgrims, its sacred sites shared between faiths. Yet even as the bells of the Holy Sepulchre rang, doubt lingered. Without armies to defend it, the city was vulnerable, and within a decade it would once again fall. Frederick's triumph was fleeting, but it revealed something powerful, that even in an age of endless war there was another path, one where words achieved what swords could not. The Sixth Crusade stands as both a reminder and a warning, of the fragility of peace, of the limits of violence, and of the strange contradictions of human history. It was a crusade born in scandal, carried out in defiance, and remembered as the only crusade where Jerusalem was gained without bloodshed. A chapter unlike any other, it lingers as a testament to one man's will, one sultan's pragmatism, and the possibility, however brief, that faith and reason might meet upon common ground.